Yep. All right. Morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today we'll have John take us through best practices and how to go about generating your own reports. So just some notes before we start today. As always, our webinars are really engaging discussions. So if you could please, if you have any questions or comments, or you'd just like to input throughout the webinar, please either use the raise your hand feature or just simply type into the chat box, which will also be monitoring. And if you could please also just stay on mute otherwise, just so we can minimize any outside noise distractions, that would be great. All right, I'll pass on to you now, JP.
Thanks very much, Alice. All right, so a bit of background about me. I am John Price, Principal Consultant in Sensei Victoria. That, as you probably know, is a rather old picture, and I don't unfortunately look like that anymore. I've got far too many wrinkles for my own liking. I've been working in the PPM space for almost a decade now, and I've done several implementations throughout Australia, Pacific region, and allegedly I am P30 and Prince 2 certified, which gives me some measure of knowledge about what I'm supposed to be doing. Anyway, that's not why we're here today. So before I get stuck into today's session, I've got a few slides to go through, and the purpose of these slides is just to set a bit of context around custom reporting. These slides I go through may answer some of your questions. I want to just, in order to have like a bit of a contiguous session, I want to run through these slides first, and then if you can sort of park your questions or pop them up in the chat, we'll take a note of those questions. And then once I've done going through these slides, we'll get into the demonstration bit where I talk through creating some reports, and we can certainly start to take the questions there. We'll start with the pre-submitted questions first, and then we'll move on to any questions that get raised throughout the session later on. So to set the scene in terms of reporting, first of all, obviously we need to understand where the user is inputting the required data. And when we're talking about project management systems, there's a number of places in which they can input that. They could input it via a Power Apps application. So for people who have got our own Power products, we use Power Apps quite extensively there. They could just input it into their schedule or project online. Potentially Dynamics, if people are using Microsoft Dynamics, whether it be PSA replacement or potentially Sensei IQ or even SharePoint lists as well. And so that's really where people will put the information in. We then have the data layer. So this is where the data is stored and how we get to that information. And there's a number of different connectors that are available to us. We can use OData. So OData is something that has been around for a while and offers us the ability to connect via a web service. CDS is the newer data source, which has been made available by Microsoft. And that typically comes with things like Dynamics, and also Power Apps can hook into CDS as well. We have our own proprietary database which we refer to as Reporting Hub. And this is essentially a SQL Server qualified database, which has got all the bells and whistles that you would usually expect with a relational database, and also SharePoint Connect as a data layer as well. So not only can people input information via SharePoint, we can also report from SharePoint as well, which is quite useful. In terms of presentation layer, this is really the output of the report. So what we're going to give or serve up to our end users. And predominantly we use either Microsoft Power BI as Microsoft's dashboarding tool, or we use SQL Server Reporting Services, or SSRS for short. And the presentation layer that we use really depends on the requirements of our reporting recipients. And the next slide I'm going to go through will probably give a bit of context to you about which one we use depending on what we need to do for the user. So SSRS versus Power BI. It's not really a case of one size fits all. They serve useful purposes depending on the type of report that you're doing. And typically the primary purpose of SSRS is to be informative. So we use this technology platform for things like project status reports and reports where we need to essentially generate the information and then send it out to end users. Power BI typically tends to be a bit more analytical by nature. So we'll have are larger data sets, and we use things like graphs and charts to slice up the information accordingly. Content for SSRS generally tends to be more contextual. So in terms of a project status report, we really want to be having more text in there to provide a bit of context to support things like KPIs, project dates, risks and issues, and all that kind of good stuff. Whereas Power BI generally tends to be more quantifiable, so hard data, so things like numbers, costs, dates, essentially things that we can roll up and put into charts and visuals. Layout, SSRS, we want to export these things so the layout is generally fixed and the data is changing within the layout, whereas Power BI is designed to be interrogated, so the layout can be variable. Interaction, SSRS, no. As we're going to print these out, there won't be any interactivity with them. Power BI, definitely people can drill down from a very, very high level of information all the way down to the lowest possible, and that's designed to serve that analytical purpose. In terms of printability and exportability, SSRS is very much designed to be paginated for users to print or to export to things like PDF, Excel or Word. Whilst Power BI does have the ability for these things to occur, so you can definitely export Power BI out to things like PowerPoint, it kind of defeats the purpose of having an online dashboard. Really, with Power BI, we want to be posting these things to the Power BI service so that our users can consume them either within Power BI or potentially within Project Online itself. And I guess that leads on to this very last point here, which is around push or pull. Typically with SSRS, the user or the PMO will run the report, validate all the information that's within that report, and then push it. So essentially either email it or make it available to users, so sending it out to them. Whereas Power BI is designed to be more of a pull scenario where we will post the dashboard and the users will essentially self-serve. So they'll go into the dashboard and start slicing and dicing the information that's within there. In terms of which one I should use, I put together some very basic sort of use cases to sort of help set the scene for the latter half of today's session. I need to be able to print or export my report. SSRS is definitely going to be your best bet there. In terms of wanting to analyse the whole portfolio and slice and dice the information, highly recommend using Power BI for that purpose. You could put something together in SSRS, but it's definitely not going to have the same power and usability that you're going to get from Power BI, especially when served up online. I need to share my report output with users who don't have access to the source system or external to my organisation, SSRS. I need to analyse my data quickly to answer questions. Definitely use Power BI. There's also a nice little feature within Power BI called the natural language query, where once configured, users can type in a question without needing to understand the underlying data structure or needing to code anything to essentially pull that information out in real time, which I think is really, really nice piece of kit. My report has mostly contextual data. So by contextual data, we mean commentary in big blocks of text where people are writing an update either on the status of the project or for various aspects of the project, whether it be financials or the schedule. SSRS is your best bet there. And my report has mostly graphs and charts. Power BI. SSRS does have graphs and chart functionality within it, but this is quite limited and doesn't have that nice drill through capability that we get from Power BI. In terms of getting started, so if you're wanting to create your own custom reports, if you're wanting to use SSRS, you'll need to go and get yourself a copy of Report Builder. This is my favorite word, free, and that you can get it from that link there. You just need to be able to download it and to install it onto your PC. Once you've got it downloaded, you'll open up Report Builder and connect to the appropriate data layer. So for SSRS, your options are going to be SQL Server or other database, or potentially a SharePoint list, and then you'll build your report from there. And so in the next part of the session, I'm just going to go ahead and create a very basic report to show how that hangs together. And for Power BI, you can also download Power BI Desktop for free. It's available via that link, and obviously, again, you'll need the ability to download that and install it onto your PC. With Power BI, there are far more options for connecting to a data layer. We can connect to CDS, SQL Server, OData, and SharePoint lists, just to mention a few, but there are many, many more available to us. And then we go and build the report. Typically with Power BI, you'll start off by transforming the data. So there's generally a bit of cleanup that needs to occur there to make the information presentable to your end users, and then you'll go through and add visualizations and then potentially publish it to Power BI online. Depending on how you wish to share Power BI reports with your end users, you may end up needing to have a license for that user. So you may end up needing to purchase Power BI Pro licenses for SSRS, as we're going to be running these reports and either printing them or exporting them. There's no need for an end user license for SQL Server. Now, I'm going to stop killing everyone with PowerPoint and I'll jump into a bit of a demo on creating reports. Obviously, if you've got any questions, by all means, ask away, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. What I will do here is I'll start off with SSRS and I'll create a report connecting into our demo environment. I'll show some of the features of SSRS and show two methods for getting information into a report and then publishing it into our demo environment. Once I've finished with that, I'll move on to Power BI. And so with Power BI, I'll do it slightly differently. I'll create a Power BI dashboard connecting via the OData feed. I'll show some basic process around doing data transformation and adding in some visuals, and then I'll finish it off by publishing it to the Power BI service, and that would typically be how the end user would consume the dashboard in Office 365. Does anybody have any questions before I get into the demo half of the session? All pretty quiet. I'll take that as permission to proceed. So I'm just going to change my screen that I'm sharing. I'll share my second screen. So this is Report Builder, or otherwise known as SSRS, and it is our mechanism to create reports for Project Online and for other sources of information as well. So we could connect it into SharePoint lists or other databases that are supported. When you've got it installed, it will open up as a blank canvas for you to start creating a report. The first thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to connect it. You'll need to connect it to a data source. So data sources are just under here. And so we'll go ahead and add the data source. Now for this demo, I'm going to use Reporting Hub, and I'm going to use our demo tenant for this purpose. And I'll just pop my credentials in now. So we'll build the connection. So the first thing to do is to specify the server. And that's the server name there. We need to use SQL Server authentication. So Windows authentication will not work for Reporting Hub. So put in my username and my password, and then I'll connect to the actual database itself. Once I've done that, I just want to make sure that I'm testing the connection. So the test connection has succeeded, and then I'll save that. So now that I've got my connection established, I can do a couple of things here. I can go and add sets. So data sets are my mechanism to get information from Reporting Hub. I've got a predefined query that I'm going to pop in for the sake of today's demo. And this is I'll embed it in my report. I'll use that connection that was defined earlier on, and I'll pop in my query, refresh the fields. It will ask me to log in again. So I'll go and get my username and my password. And then go OK. And now we've got some information that we can put into the report. So on this canvas here, one of the first things that we want to do is, as this is going to be a paginated report, we need to make sure that we specify the canvas size that we expect this report to be. So for this example, I'm going to make this so it's available for a Word export. So I'll go into the properties, specify it as A4, And I'm just going to reduce the margins just a little bit to give me a bit more room to play with. So that's now set the canvas size for this particular report. And from here, I can now put in a table into this report. So what I want to do with this particular report here is I want to serve up some status commentary that's been provided by my project managers so that I can make a printable report to share with my executives. So I'll put in a table here, and I want to put in the name of the project. And so I'll make that just a little bit bigger. And I want to put in a couple of pieces of information, the overall status KPI for the project, the project commentary. I'm going to make that a bit wider. This particular field here is a commentary field, so it's going to provide us a lot of contextual information that will be useful to view. And then when I'm ready to preview the information, I'll just run the report. Now for this particular report, I've filtered it down to a specific project. And what you'll notice here is it's given me quite a basic table of the information. This information that you're seeing here it looks like junk on first view, but it's actually formatted text. So one of the nice things about SSRS is I can actually interrogate those. So they're called HTML tags. So I can use this inbuilt, and that will now remove all of that junk, and it'll actually interpret the styles. And as I scroll down here, you can see here the users actually specified some bold text, and they put in some numbering into those text updates. So we can use SSRS to interrogate those text updates. From here, I probably would format it to look a bit nicer. So I would I could reduce the bordering so it doesn't look quite so massive, and put in some background colors to format it so it looks a bit nicer for our end users. So put in a block fill there, change the text color. From here, I can do a couple of things. If I wanted to order the information, I can use the group property to do that. So I can add in the sorting. And for this particular one, I want to sort it by the date. So these status updates, I've got a date, and I want to sort it in reverse order so I get the most recent commentary first. I can also provide a title for this. So I will call it Progress Updates Report. And I'll just preview it again. And that's looking a bit nicer now. So we've got status update commentary formatted in a format that will look nice and that it will export nicely to a format for us. Now I'll save that report and I'll put it on my desktop. We'll call it report. And now what we need to do is we need to put it somewhere so our end users can actually consume this report. And so if you have a project online instance, we use a custom web part which enables us to serve up SSRS reports to our end users. And I've prepared one of those pages earlier just so we can show how this hangs together. I'll edit the page. I'll go and edit this particular web part that we use to serve up SSRS reports. Go and grab that file, which is this one here, webinar report, and then upload. And once it's uploaded the report, I can then stop editing the page. And now the end user who we want to make this report available to can come into this page and run the report. And from here, they can export it to a variety of different formats. For this particular one, we'll go with a Word format. And now we have a paginated report, which we can share with our end users. And one of the out-of-the-box things that SSRS will do is it will put in the runtime and the run date. And from here we can print it, or we could email it to an end user and share this information with them quite nicely. So that covers off a demo of creating a custom SSRS report. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to showing a Power BI dashboard?
Hi.
Hi.
I just was wondering, does it have the same functionality as Word, so you could like have the repeater header row and all that sort of stuff if it goes over multiple pages? Like, does it have all that same functionality?
Yes, so actually that's a very good point, and I probably should have included that in my particular in my tablets here. So you'll notice we've got things called row groups and column groups. And what I can do is, if I put the advanced mode on for column groups, what I can do is I can select the top row here, which obviously would be the header row, and you'll see that we've got repeat on new page, and then I can just change that to true. And so what that will do is the project name, column header, overall status KPI, and overall status commentary will now get repeated on all subsequent pages.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good pickup, and that also applies to other formats as well. So if you exported the report out to PDF, it would repeat those column headers on subsequent pages as well.
JP, we also had a question come through from Simon. So Simon's just wondering, when would you create a standard report that pulls all fields to Excel for users to manipulate versus a specialized report like the one you have done that users cannot modify?
I guess it depends on the intended audience and also the intended purpose of the report. So typically, we would produce a report like this to serve the function of a status report. So something where we don't want the end user to change the format. So we have a requirement for the format of the report to be the same and for the data to change. And so the biggest use case for these types of report is those contextual things, project status reports, program status reports, anything where we need contextual information and for the formatting to remain unchanged. You can also, Simon's quite right, you can also use SSRS to produce what I would refer to as a data extract style report. And that would be where you'd have a tablix similar to this one that you're looking at here, and you'd add in lots and lots of columns, format all the information accordingly, and then the user would be able to export that out to Excel. The one thing that you need to note is if you're going to go down the path of putting together a data extract style report, there's a couple of caveats to that. You would need to remove this title field here, and you'd need to ensure that there were no groupings on this tablix here and that it was aligned all the way up to the top here. So I'd have to take this out and then move this all the way up to the top, and then essentially remove all this white space and even remove the footer as well. If we leave things like titles and footers in there, it will then introduce extra rows into the Excel extract, which will make it not able to be utilized in an Excel extract. If we do it this way, each row and column header will consume a corresponding row and column in Excel, so we can then put an Excel style filter on it and then interrogate the information there that we need. Does that answer the pre-submitted question?
Yep, sounds like it does. Simon says great answer. Thanks for the tips on the headers.
No worries.
So thanks, JP.
No problem. So that pretty much covers off unless anyone's got any questions about SSRS, I'll move on to covering off Power BI. Any further questions about SSRS before I move on? This is obviously a very basic example of SSRS, and there's a huge number of functions that are available to you within SSRS, obviously bearing in mind the pre-mentioned slides around its intended purposes. Whilst there are charts that are available in here, and you can definitely put charts into these reports, they won't be interactive like they would be, like I'll show you in Power BI. They just get served up as a static image, sort of how if you've ever done reporting out of Excel, it just puts in a static graph and there's nothing really that you can do with it from there. If you're wanting to give people a nice rich drill down experience, Power BI is going to be the best bet for that. Really, this, as I mentioned before, if you've got lots of text-based information that you want to provide, SSRS is the best place to be serving that information up. Any further questions before I move on? All good. So in the second demo, I want to show you how you can create a Power BI dashboard. And for this one here, I'm not going to connect using SQL Server. I'm going to connect using OData. So OData is another type of connector that we've got available to us to get information out of Project Online, and it has some good uses. Obviously, you don't need a proprietary backend database, either SQL Server or Reporting Hub, which for us obviously is a SQL Server database in its own right, and it obviously gives you a feed of that information from the source system. The limitations of OData are that it can be a bit slow, so just bear in mind that if you're going to go down the path of using an OData feed, it does take a lot longer for Power BI to retrieve that information than it would from a SQL Server connection. And also there are some limitations in terms of the number of fields that it will bring back. So that's an important consideration if you're going to go down the pathway of using OData. But I will proceed using OData for now. So we use from Power BI, we can use this get data function here, and you can see already there's a heap of different sources. We can get information from Excel, we can get it from SQL Server, we can get it from the web. So there's potentially other sources of information that we can interrogate. For now, I'm going to use this OData feed. If you want to use an OData feed, the syntax that is your environment for Project Online. So this is our environment here, sensei-cloud.sharepoint.com/site/vnext. For most of your environments, it's going to be your environment.sharepoint.com/site/pwa, and then you just need to append this last piece here, which is _API_project data. And so that is the syntax for me to go and get the OData information for this particular environment. So I'll click on OK. And then I'll log in using my organizational account. So I'll just go to sign in. And now it's going to ask me to sign in using my Sensei account, which I will do. And now I just need to connect. And so when I go connect, it will then retrieve the information from that OData feed for me. As you can see here, it's returned a number of different objects that I can use for reporting. So for this one here, I'm going to pull in projects, project information. I'll pull in tasks as well. And for now, that will be all that I'll do. So I'll go load data. And so what it's going to do now is it will pull that information into the data model for Power BI. Now, the first thing I would recommend that you do when you get that information loaded in, so it's going to take a while it goes and gets that information for us, is to transform the data. So there's transform data here. I'll go and select that. And this essentially gives me a view of that information, how it looks when it's pulled it in from the OData feed here. So in the projects object here, we've got a whole bunch of different fields, the unique identifier for the project, enterprise project type description, and then as we move forward, you can see we've got a number of different columns of information in here. Now, potentially, there might be pieces of information in here that don't make sense to serve up to an end user. So if I didn't change anything in here and I just close and apply that information, when I go into the fields part of the dashboard, and this, well, the screen we're looking at here is very much visible to an end user, you end up presenting them with all the fields, and not a lot of this stuff is going to make a lot of sense. So enterprise project type ID, probably not going to be particularly usable for an end user when they're doing a report. And some of these other fields, you can see it has the name as a single solid block of text, which does tend to make it a bit harder to read. So that's some of the stuff that I would recommend cleaning up. So within the transformed data, I can start going through and hiding columns that I don't need. I can even remove them outright, but I generally just take these columns out as I don't need them, and even just renaming them to make them a bit more user friendly as well. So if I scroll across here, I would, for fields like this, I would put a space in because it reads a lot nicer. So project description. Might take out some of these other fields. I don't want to use project duration variance. And I can keep going through and obviously updating this information as I need to. Once I've finished transforming the data, I'll just click on apply, and then Power BI will apply the latest changes that I've made to the data model. And you can see there now it's dropped out that enterprise project type ID field because that's not particularly meaningful to us in the context of this report we're going to create. Now, if you remember when I first pulled in the information, I pulled in projects, but I also pulled in some task information as well. Now, what Power BI will do for you behind the scenes is it will create an entity relationship between these items, and it will take a reasonable punt at what it reckons the relationship between these two sources of information is. So if I pull them up next to each other, you can see here it's highlighting project ID from the tasks entity or task table. And if I scroll down within here, I should find at some point the corresponding field highlighted for me in the project entity. Scroll. I'll find it eventually. Maybe it's up the top somewhere. Project ID. Or alternatively, if you don't want to scroll through there, it'll actually just tell you what relationship it's found. So it's matching the project ID from the task entity versus the project ID from the project entity. And this, if we were to put in any sort of filters for project, it would pull in the corresponding tasks that we need. And then from here, we can start to create some visualizations. So I want to put in a pie chart. And I'll do a count of projects by location. So I can use the search to find that field. I want that to be there. I'll search for projects. And I want to do a count of projects by legend. I don't know why it didn't put through. There we go. And there we have a very, very basic count of projects by location. And I can keep adding additional graphs in as I need. So I might just do something that gives me visibility of projects by phase. Go values. Particularly, I might just stack that like this instead. And as we interrogate, the good thing about Power BI, as mentioned before, is as we slice and dice the information, it will also update other objects within the page that we're looking at here as well. And I can hold down Control to select multiple items. So really, this is the benefit of Power BI, is that rich experience of drilling down for information, which I can also do from clicking on this thing here to show as a table. And it gives me that underlying information. So you can see here, it doesn't really make sense if you're wanting to print these things out, as the layout is not fixed and they're so interactive for end users. I can keep obviously adding more and more objects into this, more and more visualizations into this dashboard, and Microsoft has quite kindly provided us with a massive selection of Power BI visuals that we can go and grab from the marketplace. A lot of them are free, some of them are paid, but I generally try to avoid those where possible. And I can keep going and going through this. And then when I'm ready to share this with my end users, I'll publish it to the Power BI service. So I'll just save this dashboard now. And now it's going to ask me to publish it to a workspace. So I've created a workspace already in Power BI, and now it's publishing it to that workspace. And then once it's published to the workspace in Power BI, I'll jump over there and then I'll publish it to an app. And so we recommend creating apps within Power BI as a very easy way of sharing this information. So I'll just jump over into Power BI and refresh this. So this is my custom reports webinar workspace. So from here, I've got a whole bunch of things that I can do. I can specify which reports I want to share in the app. So I'm actually going to hide that one because that was one that I put in earlier on. I can specify when I want to refresh the information is contained within this dashboard. Once I'm happy with all those settings, I can also then define who has got access to these dashboards. By sharing it here, I can make people admins or members from there. Once I've finished all these settings, I'll then update the app and publish it. And then I can go into the app. And the app is what the end user will consume. So the report builder or the person who's putting together the dashboard will do all of the steps up until this point. And then when we're wanting to share this with other users, this is the way in which they'll come into these reports. And like the Power BI service, all of the underlying ability to slice and dice the information is available from here. And obviously I can look at the underlying information in exactly the same method in which I did when I was back in Power BI desktop. And that's really the end-to-end process for creating a custom Power BI dashboard from scratch using OData. Obviously, just bearing in mind that OData does have some limitations in terms of some of the information that can be retrieved and potentially its speed in returning that information. And if you have Excel information offline, you could combine that as well. So in Power BI, there's nothing to stop us from adding in more and more data sets so we can go in and get more and more information and load it in. So if I wanted to tie this information together with a feed from Excel, I could then go and create an Excel import, go and get that information and then interrogate it by transform data. And also from the data model that we saw earlier on, I could go and get information from other databases, so from SQL Server or potentially from Oracle as well. And I could go and get information from the web and really tie it together to pull all that disparate information together into one spot. So in terms of demos, that's all the demoing material I wanted to cover off specifically in this session. Happy to sort of jump into those pre-submitted questions that we got earlier on. So I'm just going to work through them in the order that they were submitted. So I think, and Alice, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe we've answered Simon's question earlier on with regards to proprietary versus out of the box. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I believe so, unless you had anything else, Simon, that you were questioning. If you just wanted to, you can let us know in the chat, or that's all. But yeah, I believe it's similar to what you posted in the chat, then should be all good. Yep, all good, JP.
Fantastic. The second pre-submitted question was from someone called Thomas at CASA, and this was, if possible, please do a demonstration of building a new Power BI report from start to finish. So I believe I've covered that off as part of the second demonstration. If Thomas is in the meeting, did you have any further questions regarding that? No, sounds like that one is all good.
Yeah, all good.
The third pre-submitted question was from Sarah at Housing Choices Australia, and this was linking reports to dashboards to non-MS systems or data warehouses. So obviously, as mentioned before, within both products, but certainly Power BI has got many more connectors, and you can just keep adding in as many of those connectors as you need, and you can tie together information not only from Project Online, but from other sources of information as well, including data warehouses. If Sarah's on the call here, do you have any further questions or queries regarding linking reports and dashboards?
I don't believe Sarah's on the call at the moment, JP.
No problem. The fourth question was from someone called Peter at Services Australia. I'm not certain if Peter's on the call. Maybe you can qualify what you mean by your question. The question here was paginated reports across P3 and across multiple form factors. I was wondering if you might be able to provide some additional context about that one.
Yeah, Peter's not on the call at the moment either.
Okay, no dramas. The 5th pre-submitted question was from Michael at Department from Education. And the question was report customization and report best practices. So I believe I've covered some of that stuff off as part of the earlier part of the session. Michael, do you have any further questions for us?
All good, I think.
Excellent. And the final pre-submitted question that we received was from Gaurav at WestPAC, and it was regarding reporting and dynamic dashboard. So I believe I've covered off some of that information as part of the Power BI part of the demo. Do you have any further questions for us, Gaurav? No, all quiet on the Western Front. Okay, happy to open it up now. We've got plenty of time left. If anyone else has any questions or queries about reports, by all means, ask away, and I'm here to answer the questions that you have. Don't be shy. Cool.
Hi, JP. Thanks for a great presentation. I had a quick question about, I know you mentioned some limitations of old data. What would be your recommendation for the ideal process or ideal method to use for connecting to Power BI?
So where feasible, connecting in via a database connection, whether that be SQL Server or Oracle or another database source, would be much better. OData has this ability, thing where it will clip the number of returned fields. So when you connect into the project data source, it returns up to 46 custom fields. And unfortunately, it doesn't give you the choice around which custom fields that it returns. It will just pick them at random. So if your system has quite a lot of custom fields and you're wanting to do a report which pulls in a lot of that information, you might find that there's limitations there. Also, when it pulls in information from SharePoint lists, it has a tendency to only want to pull back the out-of-the-box fields for you. So if you've added in any custom fields in there, you might find that they are missing from the OData feed. So that's just something to sort of bear in mind if you're going to go down the path of using OData. I just wanted to use OData for today's session just to show the audience a number of different ways of connecting to the information. Potentially another way that you might get that information would be to get either connect into a SQL Server, or potentially you might have an extract of that information in Excel, which you can interrogate.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, JP.
Hey,
A quick one. That was pretty cool, the two scenarios you ran through. So the SSRS giving a static version of a report for an audience, so defining what you think they would like to see. And the other way is completely open, so allowing the user to select whatever they want. Is there something in between? Maybe you could demonstrate, like in Power BI, how you could make a report that's specific for an intended audience and kind of set up for them already?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe you can expand on that a bit more, just to give me a bit of additional context.
Yeah, sure. So often we get a question or the request to say, I've got an executive group, say for the IT department or for different exec stakeholders, and they want to see the information curated more to them to start with, and then they might interrogate further. Yeah,
absolutely. So within that workspace that I created earlier on, if I just go back to that just for a minute. Within here, I can upload a number of different dashboards.
You might have to share your screen again.
Oh, thank you, Phil. Within my workspace that I've got here, this is one I've created for today's demo. I can actually upload a number of different dashboards. So potentially I could have one that was targeted very much towards senior managers, and I could format that a certain way. Typically they want to see all of the information, very high level, just give me a summary, don't necessarily need the underlying detail, but if I want to go and get it, I can. So I could create a brand new Power BI dashboard, serve that up here, and then share that with them. potentially if I'm then providing information to a program manager or potentially to a project sponsor, they're going to likely want more of that underlying information. So we can do a separate report or dashboard for them, which provides a bit more granularity in terms of the information provided. Also within Power BI, we can put in filters into the report as well. So potentially if there was a group within the organization who only wanted to see stuff that related to their area, I could put in a filter within the dashboard itself. So maybe within the context of this report, I was going to attribute it by location. I could put that in as a page filter, and then potentially this report might just be for Adelaide, and then I could select all of the Adelaide locations, publish that report up, and then those users could consume that accordingly. And obviously from here, I can specify specific reports to share, and potentially I might even create a brand new workspace for those users if it really did need to be very hardly segregated between those two groups of individuals. Make sense?
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Phil. Any more questions?
Yeah, JP, we just had another one come through from Simon. So with the introduction of Power BI over the last few years, how have you seen client reporting needs change in relation to project data? And what do you see as some guiding principles for reporting in new installs?
So there's a few parts to sort of unpack there. Yes, you're right. Power BI has come on great guns since it was first introduced a few years back. Prior to that, we sort of really had only SSRS and Excel, and Excel was really how we served up that need for the slice and dice capability. So when Power BI came along, that was a breath of fresh air, and it really sort of plugged that gap in terms of the ability to serve up online reports for executives. Generally speaking, my approach would be less is more. They're better to have a really fantastic dashboard that's got all of the information, which has got the fewer pages of content, than having lots and lots of reports kicking about all over the place. One thing that you obviously do need to bear in mind is there's a bit of work that goes into that transformed data step to make sure that the information has been, appropriately tagged with the correct type, and potentially there might even be some steps that you need to do to filter or sanitize the information. If users are wanting to go off and create their own dashboards, they may end up putting in their own version, which might look slightly different. So in terms of serving up corporate dashboards, that's something that the PMO will likely want to run on behalf of its user base and to gather those requirements from their end users. And potentially you may end up taking on the first bit of the Power BI build by essentially providing an already transformed data model, which has got all those objects set up, and then providing that to the end user so that they then can do that last bit around putting in the visuals into the report, just to make sure that the data set that they're working off is the same as the one that the PMO is using for its corporate reporting needs. Was there another part to that question? Can you just repeat the second bit, Alice?
Yeah, for sure. I reckon you did pretty well at answering, but basically, what do you see as some guiding principles for reporting in new installs?
Yeah, so I think guiding principles for me would be try and have the fewest number of reports that you can get away with, and make sure that the audiences are mapped very carefully for the report. So typically when we do a new build of a project online, whether it be an Empower or a standard or potentially our new product IQ, we generally run through a process to map the reports that are currently being produced and to tie them up to a person who's receiving them. And that is quite a good exercise to run through to see if there are any duplicated reports or if there are a number of versions of the same report. And the idea being to sort of consolidate those. So you have, if you've got 3 status reports currently in the organization, is there an opportunity to merge them all together and just have one? Because that's going to be a lot easier to maintain, and it's a lot less likely to cause confusion if people are having to constantly refer to different styles of status reports that are being consumed throughout the organization. And definitely the PMO will want to champion this and really own it within the organization. All good. Any further points on that, Simon?
All good. Appreciate your insights, Simon says.
No worries. Any other questions? We've still got up to 10 minutes remaining on this webinar. Don't be shy if you've got any questions. No?
All right, no worries. Thanks for this one, JP, and thank you to everyone else for joining. So we've recorded this session and we will certainly share with you later today. If you'd like a follow-up or if you can think of any other questions later in the day, please feel free to get in touch with us and we'll certainly be happy to help you out. And just lastly, so we only have 2 more Ask the Expert webinars running for the year. So our next session takes place in about 3 weeks' time, all on Microsoft Power Platform. So be sure to head to our events page on the site so you don't miss out on that one. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.